lives of humans and animals are woven in a fabric of love, trust, and dependability. Inspired by such thriving dynamics, the animal healthcare industry is committed towards the health of the triad, that is, animals, humans, and the environment. The animal health industry's core objective is to contribute towards the food security of the ever-growing human population. Healthy and safe milk, meat, egg, and fish help to meet the daily protein needs of the rapidly urbanizing population. The goal of animal healthcare industry transcends beyond healing the pain and sufferings of animals. It significantly contributes towards the livelihood of farmers and empowers the nation's economy. The global animal health industry has evolved from being an emerging industry to a progressive powerhouse worth more than $60 billion and is expected to be valued at $75 billion by 2025. The animal husbandry and fisheries sector of India plays a major role in country's growth, contributing 7% of the national GDP and more than 35% of the agricultural GDP. The animal health industry of India is poised to be worth more than $2 billion by 2026. It meaningfully adds value not only to the GDP but also creates employment opportunities in R&D, manufacturing, business development, international operations, and other sectors. The Indian Federation of Animal Health Companies, INFA, is a united progressive force of companies working towards advanced animal health care. Incepted in 2011, today, INFA comprises of more than 50 member companies representing diverse genres of the Indian animal healthcare industry, serving across species with a comprehensive range of pharmaceuticals, nutritionals, biologicals, and Ayurvedic products. INFA was formed to ensure ethical practices and enhance the animal healthcare industry's value and contribution to society. INFA strategically collaborates with various stakeholders for better animal health care. These include Indian regulatory authorities like CIDESCO, Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying, ICAR, IPC, FSSAI, BIS. INFA has also collaborated with various ministries like Ministry of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Ministry of Ayush, Ministry of Finance. INFA relentlessly works closely with scientific bodies and communities for creating awareness on zoonosis and antimicrobial resistance. INFA also plays a pivotal role in the One Health initiative, which is a collaborative and integrated approach to ensure the well-being of humans, animals, and the environment. INFA is a member of global animal healthcare body, Health for Animals, and conveys strong impressions of the Indian animal husbandry and animal health industry at the global stage. INFA also works closely with various animal health associations. Global collaborations formed by INFA also ensure greater regulatory harmony across nations. INFA believes in giving back to society through its corporate social responsibility endeavors. It stands by farmers severely affected by natural calamities. INFA joins hands with local veterinary healthcare providers and distributes nutritional and healthcare products for animals during these calamities. INFA is also raising awareness on the importance of egg and milk as a source of protein on World Egg Day and World Milk Day. INFA has been recognized on multiple occasions for its contribution to the industry. Despite reaching many milestones in its growing and successful journey, INFA's bold quest has just begun. Driven by its philosophy of healthy animals, healthier India, INFA is committed to make a difference every day and in every way.
Thank you. Once again, very good morning and warm welcome to everyone. I am Dr. DJ Kalita, a member of INFA's Therapeutic Subcommittee and currently working at Zenex Animal Health India Private Limited, overseeing technical and regulatory affairs. Now, straight away, I request Dr. Vijay Makhija, President INFA, who is also holding the position of Associate Director at MSD Animal Health India, to start the proceeding with his welcome address.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Kalita. Just confirm, am I audible and video is clear?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of entire managing committee of INFA, I extend a warm welcome to each one of you. It's indeed privilege and honor to have eminent dignitaries with us for this webinar. Shri Tarun Sridharji, Dr. Amit Sharma, Dr. Jyoti Misri, Dr. Hima Reddy sir. A very warm welcome to all of you, sir. Thank you so much for sparing your valuable time and joining us for this webinar. INFA is a united force of 52 animal healthcare companies which are working towards a singular motto of ensuring healthy animals, healthier India. This motto binds us together, and this is the purpose of all the INFA members. Animal health plays a significant role in ensuring human health because close to 60% diseases infectious nature in human beings have a linkage to the animal. So it becomes paramount importance that if the human health needs to be secured, animal should be healthy, considering the zoonotic importance of these diseases. Animal health plays a very significant role in achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal. Goal number 1, no poverty. Animal health ensures that our farmers have a optimum productivity and addressing the disease issues, which in turn helps in improving their economy and addressing the issues of poverty. Animal health ensures that there is a sustainable production of food by ensuring that the animals are healthy and the food produced from the food animals is safe to consume, thus contributing to SDG number 2, zero hunger. And we all know a good quality protein coming from animal origin also contribute to the good health and well-being. Moreover, when the animals are healthy by virtue of animal health care, the emissions coming from the healthy animals is minimal. However, if the animals are sick, it may lead to the issue related to emissions. Thus, animal health also contributes toward the SDG number 13, that is climate action. Today, on the occasion of World Antibiotic Awareness Week, which is celebrated every year between 18th to 24th of November, the objective of these events is to create a wider awareness on the topic of antimicrobial resistance. It is being jointly organized by FAO, World Health Organization, World Organization for Animal Health, and United Nations Environmental Program. So we at INFA, being a pioneer in the Animal Health Association in India, we have a dedicated therapeutic subcommittee focusing on the topics related to antimicrobial resistance. So I will request my colleague, Dr. Arun Atre, who is the chairperson of therapeutic subcommittee, to share detailed information about INFA's initiatives towards the AMR and sharing the animal health perspective. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay Makhija. And antimicrobial resistance subject is a bit more complex than it appears. And for the last many years, as we have been interacting with different stakeholders through One Health or even before, INFA has taken a lot of initiatives to make sure that how we can propagate judicious use of antibiotics in the animal health industry. During our interactions, in one of the interactions with the medical fraternity, in one of the seminars, we came to know that colistin is becoming a very critical antibiotic for the human use. Colistin was still allowed officially to be used in the animal health industry. Voluntarily, as taking a proactive measure, industry stalwarts decided that voluntarily we should withdraw this. And never ever this thing happened before because it also leads to some commercial losses. But even when we were allowed, we decided to withdraw because it was creating a lot of confusion. Because there are a lot of myths which have been created about the animal health industry also, globally as well as within the country. I would like to touch base with some of the statistics. In 2010, in one of the studies, it was mentioned that 3% of the antibiotics are being used in India. Germany was also using the 3% of the antibiotics, but look at the livestock population we had in 2010. The world consumption during that period was considered to be around 63,000 tons. So technically speaking, statistically, around 2,000 tons of antibiotics were supposed to be used by the animal health industry in India. When we did this study in 2010, we found, 2020, sorry, we found that actual consumption was some 990 tons only, not even 1,000 tons, a little below 1,000 tons. And we had to do this study multiple times because we had some other reference point of 2,000 tons of 2010. And we were wondering that, is it the real consumption? We did this study several times with all the stakeholders within the industry, and we found the consumption was not more than the 1,000 tons. So that clearly shows that between 2010 and 2020, a lot of improvement has taken place in the farming practices, especially in the poultry farming, where a lot of probiotics are also being used. In the same report, it was projected that the world would start consuming around 100,000 tons of antibiotics at a growth of around 60% plus. And India's share would move from 3% to 4%. So as a result, India's growth would have been around 200% over 2010, the global statistics. But our own belief is that our growth would be much lower than that, because in 2020, we are around 1,000 tons only. So when I compare with the livestock population of the animal health in India vis-a-vis some of these countries, for example, China is expected to consume 30% of the antibiotic by 2030. USA would be around 10%. Brazil would move to 8%. Of course, Germany might not be there in the top 10. But their farming practices are very different from our practices. So at INFA, we always debate about that, how can we carry this message of judicious use of antibiotics in a country where a lot of prescription antibiotics are being used by the human beings, even when it's a viral disease and even when it's not prescribed by the doctors. We do not have any control over the sale of antibiotics. And you might have seen this more rampant use of antibiotics during the COVID time also. Our job is a little more complex because we have to balance between the science and the commerce. We have to see food safety as well as the food security also. We also have to bust some of the myths which have been created that there have been, rampant use of antibiotics. And I think our statistics sufficiently prove that we are a very disciplined industry. Of course, the credit goes to all the stakeholders, ministry, regulators, health professionals, veterinarians, our farmers, those who move from the backyard poultry farming to the integration or the larger scientific-based poultry farming, and still they are working towards it. Our aim at INFA would continue to be One Health, and we work shoulder to shoulder with all our counterparts in medical fraternity or be in the environment. But at the same time, apart from the science, which we feel that this whole industry has been working towards the science only, because that's what will able to help us to take the right decision, and not the emotions, or not the some type of trap which has been created for the reasons better known to them. So I think animal health industry through INFA and otherwise also the other bodies are also there within this industry, those who have been working very well and making sure that how well we can control the use of antibiotics within this industry. But as I said, we still have sometimes we get trapped in the the wrong narratives, and this is something which always we have to fight with. And we all understand at INFA that what is good for this country, it is good for us. And we also understand that food safety is important because even our own family members also consume the same food. So I think our responsibility and accountability areas are much bigger, much larger, because we ensure that the food which comes from the animal farms and all is absolutely safe for our citizens. But at the same time, we also have to make sure that scientific ways are used, how we can use more of non-antibiotics or the probiotics. But I think it is a united responsibility of all. And we need to do something on the other part of One Health also, that how can we control the use of antibiotics, which should not be frequently available when they are supposed to be the prescription drug. We look forward to hearing all the stalwarts today we have for this webinar. Tarun Sridhar sir, I was talking to him just before the start of the webinar that we are so fortunate to have him. We are so fortunate that we at times wish that he could have joined us much before us, and I'm sure our journey would have been much better. And many scientists within this industry and all my industry colleagues, they concur with me when I say so. It would be a pleasure to listen to Dr. Jyoti Mishri and Dr. Amit Sharma if he's able to join, and Dr. Reddy, because their work is very, very important, not only to be understood by the scientific fraternity, but the people at large, which would shape the future of antibiotic consumption in this industry. Rest assured, INFA would always be in the forefront of making sure that countries is safe and our food is safe for all. Healthy animals, healthier India. That's what our motto is, and that's what we work for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for setting up the context. Now, moving ahead, we have the privilege of welcoming Sri Tarun Sridhar sir as the chief guest of today's webinar. I believe his name itself is sufficient. No introduction is required. The 1984 batch IAS, Tarun sir had served as Secretary, Ministry of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairy. Under his leadership, the department has made phenomenal progress, as mentioned by Akshay. An administrator, policymaker, author, and eminent speaker, we are honored to have you here. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. And I think Dr. Arun has put the whole thing in perspective. I have very little time, as I told Dr. Makhija, my problem with respect to my official commitment here. So I'll just flag a few issues with respect to antimicrobial resistance and the issues involved therein. You see, first thing is I've reached a very, very considered view and opinion after interaction with professionals like you, scientists like Dr. Reddy and Dr. Jyoti, and all other friends in the industry, practitioners, that when we are talking in terms of AMR, we are in a very data poor situation. What has happened is we have already formed certain views and opinions on the basis of anecdotal evidence, and then we try to build our arguments around it. And it is not like it's being done only by policymakers like me or the scientists, etc. It is also being done by very responsible bodies which are responsible for the issue at the global level. Now, I have on my iPad, I have just opened the website of WHO. I have opened the website of the World Animal Health Organization, OIE, and I've opened the website of FAO. And in my view, there cannot be bigger global organizations responsible for this issue as these. Now, what does WHO website says? In very bold letter, it says, stop using antibiotics in healthy animals to prevent the spread of antibiotic resistance. Then it goes to make certain recommendations and make certain observations. And one of the observations it says is approximately 80% of total consumption of medically important antibiotics is in the animal sector. 80% is in the animal sector, largely for growth promotion in healthy animals. Now, I am not doubting or questioning this figure and data. All, if as a policymaker, I would ask is, what is the source of this data? What has been the methodology to collect this data, and how this data has subsequently been evaluated and collated? The entire WHO website or this paper or the instructions therein do not throw any light on it whatsoever. Then I also went to the OECD website and tried to find literature from there. It's very interesting. When they mention the consumption of antibiotics in animals, they mention it in tons. And they mention it in humans, they mention it in doses. Then we end up comparing apples with oranges and draw certain inferences. Now, this is not to say that AMR is not an issue. AMR is a bigger, very, very big challenge. But let us first understand it, if it is a challenge, this is a challenge to what extent and what is the gravity of this challenge and gravity of this issue. Secondly, what is the gravity of this issue and seriousness of our concern at a global level and at a national level? Unfortunately, what has happened is whatever the global agenda with respect to AMR is, we have readily adopted it as an agenda, rightly so also, but should we also be adopting the same strategy as probably say the most advanced and developed economies are doing and what we are doing? Let us see the total in terms of the total use of antibiotics all across the human population. It's very interesting. The highest use of antibiotics on the basis of daily dosage per 1,000 population. The parameter is daily dosage per 1,000 population. The highest consumption is Turkey, followed by Spain, France, Ireland, Vietnam, UAE, Australia, Italy, Saudi Arabia, South Korea, United States, blah, 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 blah. India is way down in this graph. And this graph I'm reading from The Economist. And The Economist gives this source as the National Academy of Sciences. Now the daily dosages of highest Turkey per 1,000 population comes to around 48. And in the case of India, it is 13. Now this is the huge gap which we have. Now, Dr. Arun, you mentioned the figure of 900 something. I think the figure which I have been told that INFA has zeroed in on after collection is 912 tons of antibiotic usage last year in the veterinary sector. Now, you yourself quoted a figure of 63,000 tons globally in the animal husbandry, in the veterinary sector. That 63,000 ton figure is, I think, the figure of 2010, I believe, is the figure of 2010. Now, let us see, open the FAO website. Now, FAO says, estimates of antibiotic consumption in global agriculture vary due to poor surveillance and data collection, ranging from 63,000 tons per year to 240,000 tons per year. Now, even you don't have to be a statistician to draw an inference that this is a ridiculous kind of a range on which to draw any inference. Now, either you say figure of 63,000 and 240,000. Okay, let us take a middle figure. Let us not believe 63,000, 240,000. Let us say that truth may be lying somewhere in between. Although most of the people have come to the figure of around 93,000 or so in the current times, and they say by the year 2030, probably the figure would reach about 1.5 lakh tons in the veterinary sector. But leaving aside that controversy, since FAO is a United Nations organization, the most apex body in terms of agriculture and animal husbandry and livestock, let us take a mean of what FAO says. Between 63,000 tons and 240,000 tons. Let us say mean is somewhere like 150,000 tons. Our consumption is 912 tons. So it is about 1% of the global consumption. Now here you are owning nearly 25 to 30% of the global livestock resources, but your consumption of antibiotics is 1%. Now, it is not my case that this should increase or we should not address this issue. My question is, when we are addressing the issue of AMR, we should be conscious of the fact that as to what the data which has been put to test, what does that data suggest? So that we first evaluate the seriousness of the issue and concern and then apply its solutions. And whenever we talk in terms of the challenges thrown by antimicrobial resistance, we must also take into consideration the immense benefits of antibiotics as far as the management of entire gamut of human health and animal health is concerned. Now, all the scientists would bear me out that one of the most path-breaking moments in the history of human medicine and human health interventions has been discovery of penicillin. It was discovered in 1928, but it took 14 years for it to be developed into a medicine for intervention in human health. And I think Anne Miller, a lady who suffered miscarriage, which led to blood poisoning, was the first successful treatment using penicillin. And for the last 2 decades or so, there has been absolutely no discovery or no creation of a new, good, effective antibiotic. And scientists who are rational and not driven by belief and ideology also submit that one of the causes leading to antimicrobial resistance is that no new antibiotics are coming. So your dependence upon few antibiotics, repeated dependence on few antibiotics for a large range of interventions is also one of the reasons leading to these issues. When it comes to India, I had collected certain figures in terms of what the FAO says. Now it says that global use of antibiotics is primarily in cattle and pigs. In cattle also, primarily the cattle which are reared for beef purposes, and much lesser in milching cattle. Now, there is no beef industry in India. The typical size of cattle holding is not more than 2 cattle. Average comes to slightly less than 2 cattle per household. This cattle is also by and large fed on crop residues. Now, here you have a situation where numbers are huge, but the per capita holding is small. Value is per capita is small. The farmer is not even able to afford a regular good feed for his cattle. And we have come up with a situation where we're saying rampant use of antibiotics. And what really hurts me and is a cause for concern to me is that some good scientific publications and research institutions, I've got few titles before me. Indian poultry farms are spawning death bugs. India has become the powerhouse of antimicrobial resistance. Now, it may have, it may not have. I'm not questioning it. But when we make certain claims, it should be backed by solid information and data. It should be empirically proven. That is what my limited point when I talk of antibiotics is concerned. When we talk in terms of poultry industry is organized, and poultry industry and to some extent and to a great extent, shrimp industry gets a bad name when it comes to antibiotics. The global use is less than 10% in poultry and aquaculture. And if global use is less than 10%, the antibiotics which are rampantly used, if you would use the word rampant, or which are being used unscientifically as growth promoter, would not be the entire 10%. After all, antibiotics are required as an essential intervention, essential medical intervention in management of animal health also. So my limited request and an earnest plea to all of you who are deliberating this issue is that please let us take a very balanced and a rational perspective, recognizing the challenge of AMR, recognizing the fact that AMR is emerging as a serious threat to both human and animal health. We should also realize the immense benefit of antibiotics. And if it is emerging as a challenge, if it is posing as a threat, what are the causes? Address those causes, not just address the symptoms of it, and address those causes scientifically on the basis of data which is robust, which is reliable, and data which has a very high degree of integrity. Lastly, before closing, I would say the issue before us is One Health. And One Health requires a good production management systems, in good preventive health systems, in good environmental management systems. Unfortunately, the entire interventions, the entire discourse on One Health has also got confined and limited only to AMR. My experience when I was responsible for these issues in Government of India, whenever I talked of One Health or discussed One Health or wanted to bring out some strategy in One Health, everybody just said, yes, sir, AMR is very serious. AMR is very serious. AMR is only one particular aspect of One Health. So please, when you discuss, Dr. Makhija, Dr. Arun, One Health and AMR in the context of One Health, not merely AMR in the context of a very alarming and alarmist situation, as if AMR is going to cause another pandemic or whatever. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience. I wish I had more time and I could have participated with you, but I had requested Dr. Makhija yesterday that will there be a recording? So will I have the benefit of listening to the other speakers and stalwarts? And in fact, I am Dr. Arun, I am a novice. I am a total layman. If you think that I know something, the credit goes to all of you. Listening to you, hearing all of you, I have learned these things. I was an art student, and you can make out that I was not a very good student, so I could not get admission in science subjects. So I have not studied science. I have not studied veterinary medicines. It is just a quirk of fate that I happen to get an opportunity to work in these sectors as a policy maker, as a program implementer, etc. Interacted with you, and I've learned quite a bit from you. So whatever I'm saying is I'm just giving it back to you from what I've learned. All what I'm saying is, why I'm saying it is that whenever I was confronted with drafting or suggesting an appropriate policy or intervention on these things, I always said, well, I always used to tell the scientists and industrialists and stakeholders like you, please convince me. You please convince me. I'll listen to you patiently. Please convince me on what basis have you drawn this inference and this opinion that this is a serious issue. And my Dr. Makhija knows, I've interacted with him a lot of time, because I also told him, where is the data? What are the figures? How much of it is used? And I'm glad that INFA has done this exercise and come up with a industry backed figure. And I'm sure this is going to be of great help. Thank you so much for your patience. It's been a real pleasure and honor to be with you today.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Sir, quick response. So definitely, sir, we'll be taking a note of your suggestion of looking at the AMR in the context of One Health, and also recordings of this session would be provided so that the deliberations are shared with you, sir. And thank you so much for your precious time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable insights. And it was very informative one. We are honored to have you here, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Next presenter will be Dr. M. Reddy. He is a renowned scientist in the field of avian health. Dr. Reddy has obtained his PhD from Melbourne University, Australia. He is also member of Australian Veterinary College Scientist. He is having lots of research work in the area of avian disease control and diagnosis. So over to you, sir, Dr. Reddy. Yes, your screen is visible. You please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Now input presentation mode. Yeah, is it visible, sir, my screen?
Yes, sir.
So, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much for giving me opportunity to be part of this meeting and this webinar, and I thank organizers for inviting me for this one. Yeah, as you all know, this antimicrobial resistance, I think the last 10-12 years, this has become a major issue. As you know, there are three major international organizations, FAO, OIE, and World Health Organization. They identified some of they joined as a tripartite alliance, and they identified some of the major issues which are causing impact on society. So these issues cannot be handled by single organization, that is FAO or OIE and WHO. These are actually linked with all the human animals as well as environment. So, and also it's a food animals. So all these organizations, they came forward and they made a tripartite alliance, and they identified three major burning issues. That is, one is avian influenza, second one is antimicrobial resistance, and the third one is rabies. So these are the, so one particular organization cannot handle this. So that's why they made a tripartite alliance. And subsequently, United Nations Environmental Program, because it is also having impact on environment, the United Nations Environmental Program, they also joined together to handle and prepare, predict and detect the global health threats and promote sustainable development. And antimicrobial resistance is also a part of that. So the aim of this tripartite AMR alliance, actually to ensure the antimicrobial agents continue to be effective and useful to cure disease in humans as well as animals, and to promote prudent and responsible use of human and as well as veterinary medicines. Then antimicrobial resistance is an increasing global concern for humans as well as animals. But it is an inevitable consequence, and antimicrobials are used in both humans and animals to prevent and control or treat diseases. The resistant bacteria arising either in humans or animals, or the environment may spread from one to other from one country to another country. So the media news with some statements here. The world is burning out of antibiotics. That is a WHO report confirms. This is released from Geneva. Then antimicrobial resistance is a global health emergency, and that will seriously jeopardize the progress in modern medicine. Then pharmaceutical companies and researchers must urgently focus on new antibiotics, stop using antibiotics in healthy animals to prevent the spread of antimicrobial resistance. And as you know, the impact of AMR would be some 28 million people. They projected to fall into this, and also it also actually affects the food safety, welfare issues, economic problems, and political challenges of this WHO, FAO, OE, and G8, G20, and other organizations. Then impact of AMR, almost 7 lakh annual deaths they currently reported, and 10 million projected by 2050. Then 100 million trillion loss in global economy till 2050, and 3.5% reduction in the global GDP. These are the figures from World Bank survey report. And keeping this, the WHO came up with the global strategy for containment of antimicrobial resistance. Then these are the objectives of WHO, FAO, OE Global Action Plan. The improve the awareness and understanding of antimicrobial resistance, then strengthening the national capabilities and policies and institutional regulatory frameworks and networks, then support harmonized AMR surveillance. So this is important actually. Everybody should use the same methodology or tests so that it can be compared along with the country as well as across the countries. Then promote research and development of new antimicrobial agents. Then support to fight against circulation of poor quality and counterfeit products. And also based on this, the OE also come up with the antimicrobial resistant strategy, the role of food and agriculture. So this is a document prepared by OE. Then keeping all these three, our Indian government also, I mean, National Action Plan, antimicrobial resistance also come up. And here also their focus areas are mainly same thing which are already reported in the OE and WHO strategies. So what are the steps taken by the Indian authorities? So they made mandatory to mention withdrawal periods on the labels when they are using. Then DADF issued circular requesting states to advise veterinarians to judicious use of antibiotics. and also mentioned stop using or restrict using these antimicrobials in the animal feeds. And the national policy for containment of AMR 2011, Ministry of Health, then a new schedule H1 antibiotics along with the certain other drugs is also introduced. Then IMA standard for treatment guidelines while prescribing the antibiotics. Then where these antibiotics are used in animals, actually we use animals treatment, metaphylaxis and also prophylaxis for growth promotion. So these are the four, but nowadays I think most of the poultry companies and integrators, they started reducing the use of these antimicrobials in the feeds. So these are the some of the antibiotics which are in the first, actually these are the antibiotics in this first second column, they're used in the animals, sorry, human beings, and the second one is used in animals, and these are the growth promoters which are actually allowed to use. There is some blocking my this thing. Just a minute. Yeah, sorry. This is the volume of antimicrobials used. The penicillin is 44% by humans and 6% by animals. So like that, cephalosporins, sulfa, quinolines. If you see, only tetracyclines are most commonly used in animals, but all other, they're very less in the percentage wise, if you see. Then another important thing is the maximum residue levels and withdrawal periods. These are very important. We need to concentrate, especially in terms of producing food, that is chicken, meat, and eggs. The quantities should be less than accepted maximum residue limits. So actually, this is on data. I think some of you also attended one meeting with CSE. I was also there. They actually telling that these are the residue levels in the first table. In the upper one, they said these are the residue levels, and they're making some negative propaganda that industry is using these antibiotics. So these are the, but when we compare these values with already emeralds by European standards or American standards, they are much below the recommended emeralds. If you see here, this down emeralds for European standards, that is here if you see, for example, oxytetracyclines, as per the CSE study, it is 8.4 and R13. This is a range they detected in muzzles or whatever. Then if you see same thing here, the standards is 100. It is far below the emeralds accepted by the European standards. So here, if you see even American standards, the emerald levels are still higher. But if you compare with American standards, these are nothing. Whatever the CSE has reported, it is very, I mean, within the limits. And also recently, our institute, we have one project in that we collected some samples from the markets. So when we tested, none of the antibiotics, of course, we detected 7-8 antibiotics, but none of the antibiotic was above the MRL level. So this is the withdrawal period of some of the antibiotics which we should follow. Then these are the categories of antibiotics which are allowed for veterinary as per the OIE. So there are so many antibiotics. All these are actually, this list is only for avian. I separated for avian. So the first category is veterinary, very critically important antibiotics, very high important antibiotics, and important antibiotics, veterinary important antibiotics. So we have very good number of antibiotics which are actually allowed for veterinary use. Then what is the, where we are actually look for this misuse or overuse of antibiotics? In humans, mostly they do mistreatment or misdiagnosis, or in the old age, then immunosuppression or HIV, then underdose, then incomplete course, then without doctor's advice. So these are the some of the situations where they misuse in humans. Similarly, in animals, actually in high risk infections, then mass medication. So one important thing for us is if a farmer is having suppose some 50,000 layer birds, if he finds very few birds showing some eye swelling or he suspects for coryza, maybe hardly less than 1% or even 0.1%. So if suppose 100 birds, if he found when he was moving in the shed, and he will prescribe medicine for entire 50,000 birds. So here actually that is the mass medication what we are using. I cannot say this is not required, but we have to decide whether we need or not for the situation in this particular point of time. Then late diagnosis. Generally what happens in poultry, if there is a problem, farmers, because they do not have their own veterinarians, so they will inform to companies, or the companies will send their doctors. By the time they reach the disease, phase might have crossed, misdiagnosis on the late diagnosis, that creates complications and more use of antibiotics. In the similar way, when there is a vaccine reactions, they use antibiotics, immunosuppression, then poor hygienic conditions, then poor growth, then quality of drug also sometimes it matters, then incomplete course. Then complexity of poultry health problems, if you see, why actually we need to use, if there is a immunosuppressive diseases, and if there is a loss of integrity in the gut, and also if there is a loss of respiratory integrity, so the bacterial infections get into the animals, and most of the times the viral infections, they're followed by bacterial secondary infections. So most of the times in viral situations we use antibiotics. So we need actually a framework. This is a 5R framework for good antimicrobial stewardship to control antimicrobial resistance. So what we need is we need to use responsible use to reduce, refine, and replace. So we have to develop the strategy, then we have to implement the strategy, and if it is whether it is working or not, we have to review, and we have to develop our best practices to overcome the situation. And the proportion of birds in different clinical groups, for example, when we take decision, so we need to decide whether treatment is required or not. What is the percentage of moribund sick birds? What are the birds which are clinically normal, non-infected, and clinically normal but infected, and what is the mortality? These are the 4 actually situations we have to analyze before going for any giving the prescription. Then there are good initiatives in India. Madam will going to, I think, tell more about this INFAR. We have antibiotic AMR surveillance program they initiated by ICR for food animals, including fisheries. So here actually they're surveying, many research institutes, they're surveying the antimicrobial resistance, antimicrobial gene status in food animals, in healthy animals. It is a random collection of samples, not any sick animals. So I think that this data may be shortly available. If some data is there, madam, I think she is going to present. Then another important issue is the quantification of antimicrobial. This is very important, because now our guest, he told so many figures. There are actually different figures to different people. So here what we need is, we need some base data to say that our antibiotic use is reduced or increased. We need to develop our own some base data, whether what is the status of antimicrobial resistance gene, and how many, whether there is any multi-drug resistant status. So all these things, we need good data. So one good thing is we need to quantify antimicrobial use. So for this, there are several methods they use in livestock and poultry. One is the garbage can audit, that is a collection of packets, when used vials or used packets, which they keep one garbage can and they dump it there, and when people visit and they collect and they note down how much quantity and all. Then veterinary invoices, This is actually, there will be some veterinary export software and system vet software, then government databases, then farm treatment records. So these are the some of the methodologies we can use and come up with what is the antimicrobial use. Then the uniform expression also is important. This is one actually PCU, that is a population correction unit. The use of antimicrobials, they express in milligrams per CPU per kg of bird, animal, live animal. So this is a population correction unit used to calculate antimicrobial use in food producing animals. So what they do is, if you see in the right side, that is x milligrams divided by x kg, that gives actually milligrams per population correction unit. So for example, the 50 mg for PCU figure for food producing animals would mean that then average and overall course of a year, 50 mg of antibiotic active ingredient was used for every kg of body weight. That what indicates 50 mg per PCU means 50 mg antibiotic active ingredient. This is the active ingredient and used for every kg of the live weight in 1 year. So this is how we have to, arrive usage of antibiotics, and so that we can compare with other countries. This is actually developed by European Medical Medicines Agency. So of course, if there are any other methods, we can, so that we can calculate and come up with these, so that we can compare what is the current status, and after 1 year, what is the situation, whether it is increasing the antimicrobial use or decreasing. And another thing is, recently actually the FAO, they have developed one protocol, because we were not having any protocol. The FAO has developed one protocol for antimicrobial estimation at farm level. I think Dr. Jyoti Irvine, she is a FAO consultant. So they have developed and they have actually validated their protocol. Maybe this will help in future to come up with what is the antimicrobial use in the country, so that we can say over a period of year, whatever measures we are taking, what is the current status of AMR, what is the current status of AMR genes which are present, what is the antibiotic sensitivity pattern now. Then over a period of time, after 3 years or 4 years, when we just say that whatever precautions measures we have implemented, adopted, that is increased or reduced, do we need to change our strategy in future? So these are the two important things. One is the surveillance, other one is antimicrobial use. These are the two important things we need to keep in our mind. And also there are actually, if you see, we have already multi-drug resistant E. coli strains, which are E. coli and also Salmonella, which are present in poultry. If you see in this figure, the figure A, actually here there are several, genes, multi-drug resistant genes. Actually, that this particular class, these are the plasmids actually in the E. coli, and these several classes of antibiotics, they are resistant. Starting sulfonamides and also disinfectants, then heavy metals also, they're resistant genes, they're having heavy metals, then beta-lactamines, aminoglycosides. So if we coming to the B, this is actually Salmonella, which is resistant to beta-lactamine. And the third last one, C, is the below one, that is actually again pathogenic E. coli, which are resistant to several multi-drug resistant genes they are processing. And also it has actually heavy metal resistant gene, that is lightly shaded one, little dark shaded one, that is actually mercury resistant gene. So even it can resist heavy metals. So these are the emergence of these strains which are circulating in the poultry. This of course reported long back. Just I wanted to give a mention about this. And here actually some 2000 isolates of E. coli from humans as well as animals, they have actually compared their actually antibiotic resistance patterns. And if you see here, this yellow one is actually E. coli. Then pink one is also pathogenic E. coli. The yellow one is actually commensal enteric E. coli. Then they won't cause disease. but they also having multi-drug resistant. If you see here in the down, these are the actually number of antibiotics which are resistant. 1 to 2, how many isolates? 385 and 156. Both together, these are even pathogenic, even even E. coli. Then if you see here, 7 to 9 and more than 10, last one is more than 10. Of course, only there are 2, but E. coli, there are E. coli strains which are having more than 10 drug resistant genes. So multi-drug resistance is also an important issue in E. coli, because in poultry, the major, if you can control E. coli, I think most of our problems are solved. Even 70 to even sometimes 90% of issues, bacterial problems are with E. coli. Then these are some core principles. I'm not going to detailedly explain. These are some core principles of antimicrobial, appropriate use of antimicrobial agents. So we have to classify these things: the pre-treatment principles, then accurate diagnosis, then core principles of appropriate use, that is a therapeutic objective and plan. We should have a clear objective and plan of application. Then justification of antimicrobial use, guidelines for antimicrobial use, then critically important antimicrobial use, whether we need to use or not, whether it is required or not. Then the spectrum of antibiotic activity, then culture and sensitivity also we have to take into consideration. Then sometimes we use extra label which are not indicated for one species. With the experience of other species we may use that also. We can judge and judiciously use. Then drug use principles. It has got some 22 principles I have taken from report. Then the dosage regimes, then duration of the treatment, labeling and instructions, target animals, record keeping, compliance and monitoring. Then post-treatment activities, the environmental contamination, whether there is any environmental contamination after using our antibiotic, then surveillance of antimicrobial resistance, then continuous evaluation of whether the antibiotics are effective or not, then continuous improvement. So these are the core principles of appropriate antimicrobial use in poultry. Then, of course, if you're coming to the farmers, producers, so what are the responsibilities? They need to actually develop health plan with the attending veterinarian. So first thing is, we do not have our farmers, they do not have attending veterinarians. So attending veterinarians, so they're also responsible. I tell you one example. When I was in Australia, the food inspectors, they visited some supermarket and they collected some meat samples, packed meat samples, and when they analyzed it, they found one particular antibiotic is above the MRL levels. So that means the farmer is not using, the farmer has used and not followed the withdrawal period. So then who is going to be affected here? Actually, the farmer, because the rule is every farm should have a veterinarian, registered veterinarian, and the veterinarian should have clear idea about that particular farm and when birds came and what is the disease status. By evening every day you will report, you will give the, you will get the report from, then he will give the prescription. Then based on the prescription, the farmer will implement. So even in one situation, I noticed the government has, they filed a suit against a veterinarian, why he has used this particular antibiotic, or maybe which is not recommended, or all those things. So ultimately that situation is not here. What I'm trying to say here is, we do not have, our farmers do not have, they do not keep any attending veterinarian, so that you will be having clear idea about the farms. So that is one important thing when we really want to bring down the issues related to antimicrobial resistance. Then use of antimicrobial agents only on prescription of the veterinarians. Of course, this is a very difficult situation, because even freely we get antibiotics for humans, then for animals, of course, we cannot expect at this point of time. Then comply with the recommended withdrawal periods, then maintain all the laboratory test records, keep adequate records of all the medicines used, then inform veterinarian of concurrent disease problems. So these are all the important points farmers or producers has to keep in their mind. Then, of course, ultimately there are some nowadays several very good alternatives to anti-AGPs also available. They're starting from, you can say, organic acids, essential oils, probiotic, prebiotics, and also immunomodulators. I think with this, this is my, I think, last slide. And thank you very much once again for giving me this opportunity to share my presentation. Thank you. Hello.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It was indeed a very excellent coverage on AMR in Indian poultry, and highlighting the way forward for antibiotic estimation AMR genes, as well as for its containment. Please stay back with us, sir. There may be some few questions from our participants.
Yeah,
yeah, after this, there will be a question and answer session. Dr. Jyoti Mistry is an MBSc PhD gold medalist, is working as a principal scientist, ICAR Animal Health, having 30 years of rich experience in teaching public health, research management. She is working as a nodal officer of ICAR Animal Health Institutes, IBRI Jatnagar, PDA Project Director at FMD Mukteshwar, Nivedi Bangalore, and Nisha Gopal, and NRC Hisha. She has the credit of national and international recognition through cutting-edge research work pertaining to the animal health. She is having more than 100 research publications in national and international journals, 8 books, and many more. She is one of the experts in the area and working on various Government of India initiatives on AMR and One Health. So over to you, ma'am. She is also lead of INFAR, Indian Network of Fishery and Animals Antimicrobial Resistance, constituted by FAO and ICAR. Jyoti ma'am, you may please share your screen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And at the outset, I feel sorry for my disturbances due to sharing. This is unusual, but still, I think there was some problem with the net or some my system. At the outset, I thank INFA for taking this initiative and providing a platform for me to share my views on antimicrobial resistance, as this is an antimicrobial awareness week. And I am working in this sector for quite a long time. And so I feel it's my privilege also to be among elite gathering of experts and present my views on the most important subject of antimicrobial resistance. So I will be emphasizing on the INFAR and in this program, what initiatives we have taken and how important this antimicrobial resistance is. Taking a cue from Dr. Sridhar, what he was emphasizing, though we know that antimicrobial agents have been a wonder drug and they have become indispensable choice of modern medicine since the introduction of penicillin in 1942 for clinical practice. But the time has come when resistance started to crop up and spread among the pathogens against even the newer and higher generation of the antibiotics, making them as no longer effective. So AMR has cropped up, and what Dr. Sridhar was emphasizing in the morning, that there is not that much of antimicrobial usage in the Indian scenario. But we have seen that because we don't have data on AMU use in our poultry sector, in the animal sciences sector, and there are emphasis which needs to be taken up for getting this data on the antimicrobial usage in the country. And antimicrobial resistance is considered as a threat to modern civilization which can jeopardize global health, economy, and human development. Even the then director WHO, Margaret Chan, he said and emphasized that world is on the brink of losing these miraculous cures. And it was in the UN General Assembly 2016 that antimicrobial resistance issue was raised, and this was the fourth health-related issue which was discussed in the General Assembly, which was preceded by the HIV, non-communicable diseases, and Ebola. So I would emphasize here that this is not unlike other control programs which have been initiated by the government of India, because we have set pattern of vaccination control for them, and in all those sectors we emphasize on vaccination, sero monitoring, sero surveillance, and quality testing of the vaccines. But this is a program which is unlike other control programs, because this requires sustenance of effort, sustenance in the policy system, and sustenance in the funding, and sustenance for continuing the activities, because we don't know what happens to the resistant pathogens, what are their transmission dynamics, and how they are being transferred from human to animal sector, and from animal sector to aquaculture to wildlife. So besides antimicrobial resistance, we need to have emphatic knowledge about the zoonotic diseases. We have seen the role of the animal sciences sector, in terms of intermediate hosts, in terms of the various factors which have taken the world by storm, and how we saw it in the current pandemic, COVID-19, the role of the animal sciences sector. And I thank the government of India for giving emphasis to the animal sector, and they have initiated some of the control programs at the central level. So not only to get productivity and production, but also in a way vis-a-vis enhance the public health safety and the food safety of the overall sector and overall public health, be it in the nutritional security or in the food safety sector also. So I have to do justice to the time provided to me by INFA members. Thank you. So I would say that as per the data which is available, and some of the studies have been carried out by the INFA group also. So in AMU usage in the I think it has been to around 93,309 tons, what Dr. Sridhar was emphasizing, and the expected global microbial sales in 2030, as per the literature, are projected to be this much ton. And that emphasizes the 11% increase. And we have seen that antimicrobial usage is more in the system where there is intensification of the piggeries and intensification in the poultry sector also, and wherever there is organized sectors, maybe to take care of the infections in the neonates or in the early system, we are in habit of using antimicrobials. We are saying that what sir was saying in the morning, that we don't use that much of antimicrobials, but we don't have data, and because of our rural systems, not organized sectors, they don't have an knowledge and awareness about what they are using. They are, because I myself gone and collected data, they say we have used this. So that means not only the surveillance, but the awareness for the antimicrobial resistance is very, very important, and we need to emphasize that. And if the trend goes like this, it is estimated that Asia assumes the largest amounts of antimicrobials, and this is projected to be 63,062 tons by 2030. Now, these are the figures, and I think I won't go much back, as it is this much in 2017. But however, we see an expected rise in the usage of the antimicrobials. But if we are with providing stewardship programs, so we and make awareness to all the informal sector also, so that the antimicrobial usage gets reduced. Next, please. Dr. Nitin Moog. These are some of the antimicrobial resistance bacteria in animals in the Indian scenario. And I have given the references in the mastitic milk, in the bovine mastitis, and these are the Indian references, Ghatak and Bandyopadhyay. And the mechanism of resistance proposed have been the horizontal transmission, and definitely the resistance from the bovine mastitis pathogens. And then we have, in this reference, I could find out that there was an extensive use of beta-lactam antibiotics. Similarly, there are some references from Odisha, Hyderabad, Calcutta, and Haryana also. And the mechanism of resistance proposed was there was a cross transmission between human and animal in Calcutta, mastitis milk, and in the transmission and acquisition of antibiotic resistant gene by plasmid and mobile genetic materials, be it transposomes or integrons. Next, please. We have seen in the animal sector, we are encountering the problem of major viral diseases, be it FMD, PPR, IBR. Recently, we have seen lumpy skin disease, how it has impacted the whole country, and it has almost become an endemic. And then we have a problem of African African swine fever recently, and we are our institutions are working in R&D for getting the vaccination, and we had a meeting I think 2 days before for getting work on this ASF, because we are facing some problems in this vaccination. So definitely we have some major bacterial diseases, major parasitic diseases, I won't name them. And the economic losses are great. In FMD, we had estimated about 20,000 crores, in PPR this much, and hemorrhagic septicemia and brucellosis also. And even the mastitis, the dairy industry due to mastitis, because mastitis is not, this is a combination of etiological agents. This is a syndrome type. We cannot attribute to one etiological agent. And so these problems, they indicate that there's an urgent need to have strategic national framework for their eradications. Otherwise, they have direct impact on the antimicrobial use and also development of the antimicrobial resistance. Next, please. What Dr. Kalita was emphasizing. There are 5 ways of antibiotic resistance. They are able to disrupt the sustainable developmental goals. Poverty, it could push an additional 24 million people into extreme poverty by 2030. And good health and well-being, the people being treated by cancer or recovering from surgeries, diabetes, food, they are at a risk of life-threatening infections. Similarly, we have seen the reduced inequality goal, and AMR could further widen economic inequality between the countries. Then we have seen that high AMR impact scenario, and there is a possible for 7% loss in productivity by 2030 if the initiatives are not being taken. And definitely AMR impact on global GDP might be as large as 2008-2009 global financial crisis, amounting to losses of around $3.4 trillion by 2030. Next. So I take the brainy quote of William Shakespeare here. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. So to have a corollary with this, next please. Some of the some microorganisms may be born resistant, some achieve resistance by mutation or have resistance thrust upon them by plasmids. Next please. So I will briefly, before going, I will briefly mention, and I think it is pertinent to mention about the mechanism of the antibiotic resistance. So I have specified is natural, where they are innately resistant to the penicillin, or there is a drug blocked from entering the cell, or increased export of drug does not achieve adequate internal concentration, like we have seen in the E. coli and Pseudomonas. And then there are drug inactivation, as we have seen by cephalosporins in Klebsiella. The next, the acquired resistance, and it is due to changes in the DNA structure of the gene, or it occurs at a frequency of 110 per million, but occurs. And as we have seen in the Mycobacterium tuberculosis and Mycobacterium leprae and MRSA also, and MRSA. And similarly, there are other mutants have they have reduced susceptibility. So, what could be the transfer mechanism of these resistance genes? Because it is very important to understand the mechanism of transfer of the antimicrobial resistance, so that we can have research areas pertaining to this, and we could work on this. Like transfer of resistant gene from one bacterium to another through conjugation, through transduction, through transformation, and transfer of resistance genes between plasmids within the bacterium. That is by the transposomes and by the integrons. And they are very important to understand the mechanism. Next, please. So I would come to my program. And so before initiating the INFAR program, we have been actively working with DHR, Government of India, for establishing the National Action Plan for Antimicrobial Resistance. And we gave a lot of input, and and we were able to conceptualize and develop those guidelines in 2017 with the, I think, through DHR. So if you could see, in National Action Plan, there are a lot many actions which have been delineated for livestock sector, for aquaculture, for environmental sector. So there have been, so it was very elaborately discussed and deliberated, and so it was appreciated at the policy level also. Similarly, taking the cognizance of all the important sectors and the importance being given to this subject. So ICR came with an objective to generate nationwide structured quality data through surveillance and research on AMR, specific to livestock and fisheries sectors, for strengthening knowledge and better understanding of the antimicrobial resistance. So this is a national network of laboratories. It includes the livestock sector laboratories and fisheries also, to strengthen surveillance of antimicrobial resistance. So surveillance is very important, unless and until keeping under consideration the diverse geographical diversity of India, and the diversity in the livestock and other species. In the northeast we see other set of species, and here north we see other separate. So there have been some pockets, we have been densely populated with the poultry sector population. So the surveillance mechanisms and the data and the sampling frame, it requires different changes. It requires as per the geographical location and the diversity of the species involved in that particular region. So I think presently we have around 12 veterinary institutions, about 9 fisheries research institutions, then state veterinary colleges, and we have regional diagnostic labs also. So in totality, presently we have about 36 centers, and we have having a holistic collaboration with the FAO. They have been holistically providing, because as I have already emphasized, the sustenance of funding, and we are running this program for the last 3-4 years, but we are running with the institution funding. So that is important. Thank you. Next slide, please. So this was established. This is the how this was conceptualized and how we started working on it, right since our meeting at in Calcutta in 2017, and then subsequently at Kochi. And these are the meetings how we have organized before coming up with the FAO-ICR meeting on operational mechanism of INFAR. And so this was operationalized for the fisheries sector also, and for the livestock sector also. Next, please. And so we thought that it is very important to have standard operating procedures before going in for surveillance for antibiotic susceptibility tests, and also in the animals and the fishery sector, SOPs were established and formulated. And similarly, we came up with an sampling framework also. Next, please. So these are the number of the institutions, animal sciences, these are fishery institutions, and we have a organized set of meetings, be it advisory board constituted by DGICR to guide INFAR. So far we have been having 8 meetings, and we are having 2 meetings in an year. And then we have annual review meetings of INFAR. They are continuing. Are having now in November, I think now by December first week, because there was some postponement of the meeting. And this is all for getting the data on AMR. Thank you. Next, please. So this is how we will target. What is the work plan? So these are we'll be working on a rectal swab for pig, sheep, and goat, and similarly for cloacal swabs for poultry. Then milk for cattle and buffalo, nasal swabs for pigs, and for animal livestock sector, we have taken E. coli and MRSA as, and we have estimated. And for these livestock sector, we have taken E. coli and staph. And for the fisheries, we have taken 4 organisms, and E. coli, staph, then Aeromonas and Vibrio. And similarly, after getting the data, sufficient data from these cases on these 2 WHO priority pathogens, we will be moving to the next set of the pathogens: Klebsiella, Salmonella, Pseudomonas, Enterococcus, and Campylobacter. Next, please. So these have the different meetings we are having, and for in enhancing the capacity building and training, and through FAO, WhoNet, for tabulation and evaluation of the data, then also for assessors training on FAO assessment tools. So we have been getting many trainings through FAO, and also some of the help from USA. Next, please. So these are the list of the capacity building programs. And so I think for the last 3 years we have been getting some data, and so this is a glance into the data. And right, we have confirmed this E. coli, and we could find that high resistance was noted to amikacin, ampicillin, and cefatoxim. And about 25% of the isolates were abicanum resistant. So this was challenging to us, because we wanted to know that even most of the livestock is not had abicanum, but how it has come. Definitely, it may have come to human handlers or through other source of transmission. Next, please. These are showing that resistance to most of the antibiotics except chloramphenicol was more frequent among avian and porcine isolates, and high resistance to amikacin, ampicillin, cefatoxim, and nalidixic, possibly contributed by the avian isolates. Next. So in this case, there are E. coli isolates, and we have seen that high resistance, more than 25% to cefatoxim, then to cefotraxone, and ampicillin and amikacin in bovines, and cefatoxim resistance is quite higher among the bovine E. coli isolates. These are maybe for the limited data we could get. Next, please. Similarly, resistance to all antibiotics was much higher in ESBL producers than the non-producers, and resistance rate was significantly higher for amikacin and cefotridium among ESBL producers than ESBL non-producers. Next. So similarly, this is MC, beta producers and non-producers, and resistance to all antibiotics was much higher in MC-BLP than the non-producers, except for chloramphenicol. So resistance rate was significantly higher for abiquinum among ACBL producers than non-producers. Next, please. So based on the 729 confirmed staph cocci of bovine, 526 and of other animals 202, we find that higher resistance uh, are noted to penicillin, and about 20% of the isolates were linezolid resistant. Next. So high resistance to all the antibiotics noticed among porcine than among the bovine isolates. Next. So these are for methicillin. Met resistant staph of food animal origin appear to carry additional resistance traits for fluoroquinolone and erythromycin resistance. This is what our data could tell. Next, please. So I could go, these are the some of the leads from our data initially. So we could see that E. coli isolates for food animals exhibited high resistance to amikacin, ampicillin, then cefotaxime, and nalidixic acid. Although these were mostly sensitive to chloramphenicol. And high resistance among avian E. coli isolates was noted for all the antibiotics, leading to overall high resistance to 4 antibiotics stated above. About 50% of the avian isolates were ampicillin, cefotaxime, nalidixic acid, and tetracycline resistant. So similarly, we could see that there is an co-resistance also existing between amikacin, abiquinim, and tetracycline and enrofloxacin, and similarly enrofloxacin and amoxicillin and nalidixic acid and tetracycline. So we could found that phenomenon also. So a lot of research and needs to be carried out in this aspect as what could be the mechanism here. Then amikacin resistance was significantly higher than ESBL producers and abiquinum resistant among ESBL producers. Then most of the staph aureus were penicillin resistant. However, among the mercia and fawns, isolate resistance to enrofloxacin, erythromycin, trimethoprim, and gentamicin was observed. Next, please. So these are for the milk samples which under our program. 150 samples including cow milk and rectal swabs were collected from organized dairy farm, and we have used this system for carrying out our sample frame as per our sample frame. Next. And one of our point of care diagnostic tests for detection, this was released in the I think meeting, AGM meeting by our honorable AM also. Next, please. So this is being released. Next. Because diagnostics are very important point of care diagnostic for the surveillance. Because maybe we are moving for a particular pathogen with a bias. So for surveillance, we require point of care diagnostic tests, and they are very important for getting a surveillance exact and good data from the surveillance is very, and definitely evaluation, tabulation, interpretation of that data is also very important, because sometimes we are getting results which are off the track, like we saw with the abiquinum resistance. Similarly, in the 1-day-old calf at IVR, IVC, ND1. So those NDM1. So these areas or these things which are off the track, they need to be deliberated, researched, and we need to work on such areas also. So I could find out there is paucity of scientific data in India on the extent of AMR in livestock sector. INFAR has been generating AMR data in terrestrial and aquatic animals for the last 3 years. However, in the last 3 years too, we have seen COVID also, and there has been a lot of disturbances pertaining to getting samples and in our program also. Then earlier one only. Then lack of information on the, you move to the earlier slides. Yes, lack of data on the prevalence of the genes which are conferring the ARGs to antimicrobial. And the most important in my is that knowledge gaps in epidemiology of antimicrobial resistance at human-animal interface. And I would also include wildlife and environment also in this, because we are getting very minimal information from the environment sector, and it is the environment sector which would play a major role, be it through various boards, pollution boards, involvement of other stakeholders. Next, please. Next. So what could be my action points is that state action plan for containment of AMR. By all states should be in line with the NAP, National Action Plan. They need to come into force as we have seen for the Kerala Action Plan. So there should be an involvement of some involvement of the PPP model, because only then will be effectively able to implement those state action plans. Delhi has come up with, I think, Madhya Pradesh, and there are some other states like Andhra and Telangana, and they are, and Punjab also, because I have been on their panel also. And so we state level AMR reference laboratories needs to set up in every state that should act as a nodal point for coordinating AMR surveillance, performing antibiotic residue analysis, and collating information on AMR and AMU. That is very important in the livestock sector. Then infrastructure of laboratories in all states need to be strengthened. Then state SOPs, they have been developed, but still we have developed for 2 pathogens and 4 pathogens in the aquaculture sector. So we need to work again. And networking of all veterinary laboratories, very important. It was deliberated by Dr. Sridhar also, One Health perspective of AMR in line with the WHO OIE approach. And I would emphasize that we are working on One Health, and we would be collaborating with various sectors. So it would be very important and very critical to have data. So One Health, so I would emphasize that for One Health approach is the best approach, but definitely the number of the stakeholders which would be involved from the One Health view, the tabulation of the data, evaluation and interpretation from the collective data is very important, and we need to deliberate on those issues also for getting rid of this AMR. And then definitely antimicrobial stewardship programs and treatment guidelines should be specific for the informal sector also. And because we don't have that much of veterinary professionals, paraprofessionals, so we need to work on these areas for making people aware about the antimicrobial resistance. Next, please. So if we are not thinking about antimicrobial resistance this time, so we have a problem. And as has been predicted that by 2050, 1 person could die every 3 seconds. Next, please. So collective efforts of veterinarians, researchers, medical professionals, policymakers, even farmers, drug manufacturers, and ultimately the general public is needed to fight the challenges of AMR. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And there has been a lot of disturbances today. Thank you very much for giving me this platform.
Thank you, ma'am. It is indeed a very excellent and informative presentation. It is always enriching to listen to you on this important topic, highlighting the ground reality as well as the way forward for the containment. Thank you, ma'am, once again. Dr. Amit Sharma, Director FSSI, could not make it to attend this webinar because his father got hospitalized. So we'll close this presentation here. Now, our next session will be question and answer session. I request Dr. Nitin Bhatia to take it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kalita. Continuing the efforts of my colleague, Dr. Kalita, I have a few questions which have come in from the audience, and I'll like to put it before both the learned speakers. The first question is to Dr. Reddy. Sir.
I'm there.
Yeah.
Please.
Sir, the Indian poultry sector has shown great progress in the last few years, and there has been an increased usage of biosecurity products, vaccines to the multifold extent, and this has reduced the therapeutic use of antibiotics in our what we feel so. So, what are your views on the same? Kindly elaborate, sir.
Yeah, actually, you may be having some data, sir, sales and how much antibiotics have been given. But really speaking, we have to estimate, as I said, milligrams per PCU. What was the reduction? In that way only we have to, that is a standard protocol. We have to say in terms of that, because they're telling in terms of tons and millions tons like that. Nah? If you buy per livestock or per human being, if you calculate, then only we can compare the current data or previous data, current year data or next year data. So I do not have that data in terms of quantity of antibiotics used in the industry.
Right, sir. But broadly, we are in agreement that overall the antibiotics usage in poultry has reduced.
That I also mentioned because especially in the integrators, broiler industry, the improvement of biosecurity, the quantum of antibiotic usage, especially AGPs, reduced.
Right, sir.
But exactly how much and all, we need scientific analysis.
Right, sir. So what are your views on the diagnostic infrastructure in case it has improved in the private sector of the poultry? I'm specifically asking you poultry questions because you are gem for the poultry sector. Yeah,
diagnosis, of course, definitely it is very important. We have several laboratories, government laboratories, IVRA, for example, there are state laboratories that under CATRAD system. But especially they say samples are not coming from the industry, and they are not allowed to visit farms to collect samples. So these are some general points I'm making. But otherwise, as far as diagnosis is concerned, it's very much important, especially monitoring of immune response as well as monitoring of antibiotic resistance patterns, and also timely detection of diseases. So in the government sector, of course, we have some, Nivedi is there, for example. Nivedi, when I interact with scientists, nobody is approaching Nivedi because they have excellent facilities there in Bangalore. So I think you should have some industry institutes collaborations and making use of these services which are available in the government sector. And if you need some extra things, if you inform, I think then definitely you should collaborate. If you give some funding or inter-institutional PPP mode, I think that is very much essential. Sometimes funding may be a problem, budget may be a problem with the government. So and also most of the government labs, they do at free of cost. So if you come up with some modalities, develop modalities, pricing of these diagnostic tests, and also if any new diagnostic test is required in particular, especially the state labs are not being used. Every state has got labs which are connected to national laboratory system. So most of the animal husbandry departments they have, but I think most of the poultry farmers, they may not be using these laboratories. That's what I feel.
Right, sir. Sir, next question is to Jyoti ma'am. Ma'am.
Yes, I'm not. Video तो आ नहीं रहा, आप बताइए.
Madam, what is your feeling about the diagnostic infrastructure that we have for livestock today, and how can we make it better with a correlation of both DADF and ICAR?
I think I always emphasize for point of care diagnostics for the animal sciences sector, and because we have been preparing a booklet also for diagnostics, and what we could see that except for the diseases which are being taken up by the government of India under control program, uh, there have been very little emphasis for the diagnosis to be taken up by the industry, to be taken up by the other commercial units. So that is a issue which needs to be taken care of. And I always emphasize for getting the epidemiology of various diseases done. And because India being a diverse country and we have diverse livestock and other poultry population, so they require different surveillance, very stringent surveillance mechanism. And for getting the surveillance data, we require very good point of care diagnostics which are efficacious and at an easily accessible and available to our farmers, to our livestock people. So I definitely look this sector because this is a sector which requires more emphasis, and we need to work on this sector more for getting the point of care diagnostics available and better collaboration with the industry.
Right. Ma'am, in the recent past, we have been listening a lot about antibiotic detection kits from ICR. So could you just elaborate on what is the work going on? Probably NDRI is working on it.
NDRI, yes, NDRI, he has, I think, commercialized also that kit. And I have shown you that one and that kit has been released also, and I think 2 or 3 that antibiotic residues kit. So they are based on not qualitative but quantitative, qualitative estimation. So it is we have come up with.
Next question is to Reddy sir. Sir, we have been recently talking a lot about bacteriophage therapy. So how do you feel that bacteriophage therapy in poultry is able to combat AMR? Yes or no? Or what are your views about the same?
Yeah, I think there are some reports. I think this is especially for food safety point of view, for salmonella control, salmonella enteritis, salmonella typhimurium. There are already some papers. So I think still it is under a lot of experimental stage. Definitely it will reduce the AMR, effect of AMR if it comes.
Our one institution is working on this bacteriophage as an alternative to antimicrobial, but it requires more research.
Right.
And RC Hisar is working, and there are other institutions also that are working in bacteriophage.
Right.
But besides bacteriophage, we have seen there are other herbal products
Yes,
also, and the phytoherbals which have been, I think, used, and there are some peptides also, antimicrobial peptides, which have been useful, and we have seen in the COVID also that there have been usage, and there is on some microbial phytopeptides our institutions are also working, and they have seen that it blocks the replication of the viral replication. So they are coming up, and they are alternatives coming up. Yeah, there are lot many alternatives to not only bacteriophage but other I think alternatives also which are being worked upon.
Right. Both my speakers have talked about population correction unit, which seems to be a very important sector, because currently what we look at antibiotics is that it is used in tons. We are not looking at body weight of an animal. We are not looking at correlation of body weight versus how much is the antibiotic usage. So truly population correction unit is something important. And actually in relevance to how much of AMR is there in India, there is again a correlation which comes from US and Europe as to how much meat we are consuming. So unit will make a relevance to Dr. Okay.
So can you repeat? Can you repeat? There was some.
I said, sir, we were talking, you and both madam were talking about population correction unit. I, again, as a colleague, a professional colleague, I feel that it is a really important thing, because currently we are looking at only tons. tons will happen because the animal is weighing 500 kg. So tons of antibiotic will be used, but we have to look at how much population we have and how much real sense antibiotic we are using, which means that everyone of you have talked about it. Dr. Sridhar has talked, you have touched, and Jyoti madam also has touched on the same topic. So PCU will be something very important, which has been touched by you. So I think
it is very important, sir, because if you see India, based on the population, human population as well as animal population, if you compare UK and America, maybe some variation is there, more or less, but we cannot compare. Suppose if you see the cell phones, usage of cell phones is much higher in India as compared to America and other countries, China and India. The number of cell phones or number of cars, if we cannot compare like that. So in the same way, for this also, we should have some international standard, that is a PCU or whatever. We have to in line with the international standards so that we can say we are using this much, and this is last year is this much. Now this year it has increased because of there is more disease challenges because of, so all these things required. So that is the basis. What Madam explained, that infra surveillance data as well as antimicrobial use data, these are the baselines. So we have to have some baselines before saying our actions are actually working or not. That's my view.
Right.
I would supplement what Dr. Reddy. Can I say, sir? I would supplement that. I would say that this is just a notion that in the animal food sector, lot of antimicrobials and I could find out with our limited data that only MRSA we could not get more than 5 to 7 or 10%. Not there. It has been projected, but it is not the real picture. In animal sector, it has been projected that for food animals we are using more antimicrobials. But I could not find out that it may be exaggerated. That is my view.
That is actually a true view, but data needs to be supported on that front. So. Reddy sir, the next question is, you have presented about a VCIA list. So okay. Is it based on any body, or is it a OI based list, or how is it?
That is I copied from OI only. I removed other species because I was presenting this data to some only poultry, body conference. So I removed other livestock. So these are the antibiotics, veterinary, very critically important, highly important. This is data from OI only, OI data.
Right, sir. Sir, that brings us to the end of the questions that have been posed by my colleagues from the industry or from the regulators or the veterinarians who have joined us. So in case anyone wants to express more, is open to do that. Any of the MC members wants to, any of the managing committee members wants to throw some light on the topic which is under discussion, please, we are open for the same. Yeah, doctor. Yeah. Sir, we have our external speaker who wants to talk in, so maybe.
Sir, good morning all. Thank you, Dr. Nitin Bhatia, for sending this flyer in the group so that I could join. This is Anand Kumar, working as Professor of Veterinary Microbiology from Andhra Pradesh. Glad to have the speakers, Dr. Reddy sir, Dr. Jyoti Mishra madam.
Dr. Anand, before you start, let me just give a small introduction of Dr. Anand. Dr. Anand is microbiology head at Gannavaram, and he is the lead for veterinary as well as AMR concept for Andhra Pradesh, which is yet another state coming out with a AMR, which has already released an AMR paper. So over to Dr. Anand for expressing his views. He is a coalition of veterinary and medical trying to work on AMR for the entire state of Andhra Pradesh. Over to Dr. Anand.
Thank you, Dr. Nitin Bhatia, for my words. So we have been working in Andhra Pradesh. I want to share a couple of developments what are happening in the states with this approach. And both the medical education, medical department and the animal husbandry department, they have initiated steps for the AMR network in the respective institutions. It's a good step about the AMR surveillance in the Andhra Pradesh in both these sectors. And Jyoti Mishra madam beautifully presented about the infra. In fact, now the visibility info is there everywhere in all the forum. And this will be very useful if all field veterinarians are given a video in the YouTube. If it is available, that will be fine. That Nitin, I think my session may be taken so that any YouTube video of this particular thing will be shared in any forum that will be useful to view by any field veterinary in the coming days. So we have been conducting the government of Andhra Pradesh in association with some consortium. They are conducting the workshop on AMR on 25th and the 26th. About all the sectors are invited, and hopefully this will give a roadmap for the effective implementation of our action plan that is coined as APCR, Andhra Pradesh Action Plan for Containment of Antimicrobial Resistance. And the government of Andhra Pradesh also constituted a state AMR cell with members from stakeholder departments, all the stakeholder departments, to take forward the AMR surveillance and containment measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anand. In fact, Dr. Anand and myself are both members of AMR group of Andhra Pradesh. So it's pleasure to have you.
Just a quick question to Dr. Reddy. You mentioned about in your presentation, you quoted some data on veterinary critical important antibiotics. So is that reference from OIE or is there any other body which has recommended?
That is the only I've taken from OIE, sir. That is the OIE, yeah.
Okay.
It's a very big list actually.
Only
avian antibiotics only I have taken. Others, this is actually avian. Some variation. This is avian.
Right. Oh, thank you.
Because in the website they have mentioned avian, bovine, like that, cattle. So all other things I removed and only avian I kept here.
No, thanks for, I think, just to comment, I mean, it has been a very fruitful discussion today, and I would only like to add that from the industry perspective, INFA is collaborating with Health for Animals on this topic of AMR, and we have evolved a unified approach wherein we need antibiotics for treatment of diseases, which is critical both for human and animals. Otherwise, a lot of number of animals will go untreated. So we need definitely antibiotics, but at the same time, we are working on approaches of enhancing our thrust and focus on nutrition, enhancing thrust and focus on vaccination, biosecurity, diagnostics, all alternatives, like a number of aspects have been discussed on alternatives. India is very much focused on Ayurveda as an alternative. So we besides definitely focusing on that there is a need for antibiotics for treatment. At the same time, we are also trying to minimize the need for an antibiotic by developing these alternative approaches. So from INFA, and as we are very closely working with other bodies, and we're committed to work with all the government bodies and agencies to further this cause. So that's the limited point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With that, we come to the end of the session, and we thank each one for expressing their views. We are especially thankful to Dr. Sridhar, Dr. Jyoti Madam, and Dr. M.R. Reddy for the elaborate presentation, the best insight possible. And yes, you have truly thrown a good insight into animal healthcare, saying that AMR may be a concern, may be a requirement to be taken care, but yet whatever issues have been highlighting, whatever data is being presented, a lot it's extrapolated and not in the true light of the animal health industry. So we all shall work to make things better. And we thank each and every person who has been associated with the webinar for all the entire efforts to make its relevance really important for the animal healthcare sector. We thank everyone, and thank to INFA and the entire managing committee for being there. Thank you to all. Thank you to the subcommittee of drugs and therapeutics to be organizing this webinar. Thank you to all.